The story unfolds in Shanghai, one of China's most formidable megacities, a sprawling urban expanse at the mouth of the Yangtze River. Home to over 24 million souls, it has for more than a century been the nation's financial heart, a magnet for the ambitious and the hopeful. In a weathered residential block on Guangzheng Road, a newly married couple was starting their life together. The husband, Zhu Xiaodong, was a 29-year-old salesman. His wife, Yang Liping, a primary school teacher specializing in Chinese language. On the surface, they were the image of a modern romance, but appearances can be profoundly deceiving. On February 1st, 2017, it was Yang Ganlian's 60th birthday. The celebration was underway with family and friends, but a noticeable absence cast a shadow over the event. His daughter, Yang Liping, and his son-in-law, Zhu Xiaodong. They were expected, but they never arrived. No one could reach them. It had been 6 months since Yang's father had last seen his daughter in person. Their only communication had been sporadic exchanges on WeChat. The silence was unsettling, a chilling departure from her usual character. For the past half year, something was clearly wrong. Every time he tried to call her, the line went directly to voicemail. On the rare occasion the call connected, there was only silence on the other end. Yang's explanation, delivered via text, was that her phone was damaged. She claimed she couldn't hear or speak through it. When her father invited her to dinner, she declined through a message, stating she was overwhelmed with work and unable to get away. A few days prior, Yang had sent her mother a text. It read, "Mom, my friends and I are going to Hong Kong for the Chinese New Year. We'll be back the day after the Spring Festival." But that day had come and gone. It was now the 5th day after her promised return, and Yang's parents still had no word. A knot of worry began to tighten. No matter how busy she was, it was unthinkable for her to miss such an important family milestone. Not having seen their daughter for months, Yang's father was gripped by a dark premonition he couldn't shake. At approximately 5 o'clock that evening, a call came through. It was from his son-in-law's parents. Zhu's mother's voice was strained. "Yang's in trouble," she said. "We're at the police station now. You should come." Upon hearing those words, Yang's parents rushed to the station, her father trying to soothe his wife's escalating panic during the journey. When they arrived, the fragile hope they clung to was extinguished. They were informed their daughter had been murdered. Yang Liping had been born in November of 1987, just 29 years old. A Shanghai native, she was an only child. In her family's eyes, she was a precious gem. Her father, a former soldier, had built a career as a police officer and was nearing retirement. Friends and family knew her as exceptionally gentle, a person who never raised her voice or entered into conflict. If she felt wronged, she wouldn't argue. She would simply retreat and cry in private. After graduating from high school, Yang enrolled at Shanghai Normal University, with Chinese as her major. She was known as the most quiet and mild-mannered resident in her dormitory. Throughout her entire university experience, she was known to have lost her temper only a single time. Her classmates had forgotten to tell her the time of a computer exam, which caused her to miss it and require a retake. But even then, by the following day, Yang Liping's calm demeanor had returned. After earning her degree, she secured a coveted position as a Chinese teacher at a highly respected Shanghai school. Landing a job at such a prestigious institution was a significant achievement. In 2012, a mutual friend introduced her to Zhu. They were the same age and felt an immediate connection. Yang found herself intensely drawn to his handsome appearance. The next year, their friendship evolved into a romance, but Yang's parents were kept completely in the dark about the relationship. After they had been dating for almost a year, an unsettling event occurred. Zhu disappeared without explanation, leaving Yang consumed with worry. Nearly a full year after he vanished, he suddenly reappeared. He fed Yang a fantastic story, claiming he had left because of a brain tumor diagnosis. He alleged that after treatments failed, he abandoned Shanghai for the wilderness of Tibet. He claimed that over time, his headaches began to fade, and upon returning to a hospital, he was told the tumor had inexplicably vanished. This, he said, was why he came back. Yang accepted the entire narrative, her heart aching for the ordeal her boyfriend had supposedly endured. When she relayed the story to her friends, she spoke of him with unmistakable admiration and deep respect. Their relationship remained a secret until Yang posted photos and messages from a friend's wedding they attended together. It was through this social media post that her family discovered, for the very first time, that she had a serious boyfriend. The relationship, they learned, had already been going on for a significant period of time. It became clear that Yang's family harbored reservations about Zhu. In fact, Yang's parents did not meet him until the day their daughter brought up the subject of marriage. Though Zhu had dinner with Yang's family on several occasions, he was a silent presence, rarely participating in any conversation. During one family gathering, Zhu made a chilling proclamation in front of all of Yang's relatives. "I really love Yang. No one is allowed to criticize her." He then added, "Including her parents. Only I can." His lack of social grace was glaring, and the statement left the family feeling deeply disturbed. The possessiveness was not lost on anyone, especially Yang's parents. Her grandmother was also direct, expressing her belief that Zhu was not who he seemed to be. Even though her parents had finally deemed him trustworthy, they still chose to respect their daughter's decision, resolving not to interfere any further. On the last day of 2015, they officially registered their marriage, holding a small wedding ceremony in May of the following year at a hotel in Shanghai. Zhu harbored a strange hobby. He collected cold-blooded animals. Creatures like lizards, snakes, and spiders were kept in enclosures on the balcony of their small, one-room apartment. At first, Yang found the animals unsettling, but her aversion eventually softened into a resigned tolerance, and she even began to help care for them. Despite this, Yang's parents voiced their deep concerns over Zhu's hobby, suggesting that their daughter should sell the animals. Yang refused, knowing it was a boundary her husband would not allow her to cross. The final time Yang's father would see her alive was at a family dinner hosted by the young couple. After that evening, Yang and Zhu paid a visit to her parents' home, but her father happened to be out. Yang's mother urged them to stay for dinner, but Yang politely deflected the offer, promising they would eat together another time. It was a brief, unremarkable moment, and it was the last time her mother would ever see her. Then, on November 7, 2016, a WeChat message arrived from her daughter's account. The message stated that for her birthday, she was planning a trip with Dong, and they would celebrate with her parents upon their return for his birthday. Dong was the last character in Zhu Xiaodong's name. The nickname struck Yang's mother as odd. She had never heard her daughter refer to her husband that way before. She ultimately dismissed it, figuring the couple had simply adopted a new pet name and thought little more of it. Yang's 37th birthday was on November 22nd, followed just days later by her husband Zhu Xiaodong's on November 28th. Yang's parents had planned to host a birthday banquet for their daughter at a restaurant, but for reasons never explained, a message from Yang's account declined the invitation. Her mother wasn't. Upset, reasoning that the young couple likely just wanted to celebrate together privately. When she inquired where they intended to travel, the response mentioned either Hokkaido in Japan, Jeju Island in South Korea. The following day, Yang's mother sent another message to her daughter, expressing a desire to speak with her and asking for a call after class. The message was read, but no reply ever came. The phone remained silent. 2 weeks later, the family cat of more than 10 years, an animal that had been Yang's absolute favorite pet, died suddenly. Her mother relayed the sad news through WeChat, but Yang's account only replied with crying emojis and a claim that she was out of town and couldn't come back. After that, her mother's attempts to call were met with either a busy signal or an immediate hang-up. The silence began to feel deliberate, and her mother's concern curdled into anger. She sent a message demanding to know why her daughter was ignoring her calls, but the response was just a series of vague excuses meant to push her away. A few days before Christmas, Yang's parents went to their daughter's apartment twice, carrying sweaters they had knitted for her and her husband. The apartment was located in the same neighborhood as Yang's cousin, but when her parents arrived, the home was dark and no one answered the door. Each time, a text from Yang's phone insisted they were out of town. On one occasion, a message claimed she would be back from Wuxi in the afternoon, but Yang's parents waited well into the evening, and she never appeared. Another elaborate excuse followed. Zhu was supposedly in a Wuxi hospital with oral ulcers requiring a transfusion, so she was tending to him and could not leave. On the eve of the Lunar New Year, a message from Yang's account announced they would be going to Hong Kong for the holiday, but would return for a formal New Year's visit on the second day of the first lunar month. Her mother replied with a veiled joke, calling her an ungrateful daughter for being out of contact for so long. When the day arrived, her parents waited at home all day long, but the couple never appeared. A message from their daughter's phone claimed their flight was delayed and they couldn't make it back. Her mother voiced her frustration with the constant broken promises. By February 1st, 2017, it was the 5th day of the first lunar month, and it was also Yang's mother's 60th birthday. She planned to attend a banquet in her honor at 3 p.m. At 1 p.m., however, Zhu's mother received an alarming message from her son, telling her that something had happened and she needed to come to his home right away. A sense of dread washed over her. She tried calling her son, but his phone was turned. Panicked, she called her ex-husband, Zhu Xiaodong's biological father, and asked him to go to his son's apartment immediately to see what was going on. When Zhu's mother finally arrived at the apartment, she was met with a confession that shattered her world. Her daughter-in-law was dead, strangled by her own son. Zhu's mother asked him why he had done such a thing, but Zhu Xiaodong gave no answer. He only kept repeating a desperate, hollow phrase. Did I want to? Did I want to? Did I want to? His mother then asked where Yang was now. Zhu Xiaodong pointed toward the balcony, indicating the freezer. The confession left Zhu's mother stunned, a paralysis that lasted only a moment before. A chilling resolve took over. She convinced her son to surrender. Together, Zhu's parents escorted him to the local police station. It was there that his wife's parents, summoned under a dark pretense, would finally learn the devastating truth about their daughter. Investigators informed them that Yang had been dead for 3 months. The person impersonating her on WeChat was none other than their son-in-law, the man who had taken her life, Zhu. The suspect, Zhu Xiaodong, was born in November of 1987, making him 30 years old. He came from an unassuming background, but his childhood was marred by the constant conflict between his parents. Their relationship eventually fractured completely, ending in divorce when he was just 10. His father departed, starting a new family elsewhere, leaving his mother to raise their 10-year-old son by herself. Further tragedy struck the family when Zhu's aunt and grandmother were killed in a car accident. In the aftermath, his mother took on the care of her sister's child, forcing her to divide what maternal attention she had. In this void of parental oversight, Zhu drifted, finding refuge in video games as his schoolwork deteriorated. During his high school years, his aimlessness curdled into delinquency. He took part in a robbery on Nanjing Road and was apprehended by authorities. His status as a minor saved him from serious consequence. He was released with a mere warning. After graduating, Zhu enrolled in a vocational school, but his lack of focus continued. He failed to apply himself, learning no marketable skills. This began a pattern of aimless employment, drifting from one job to the next, never settling. But despite a poor work ethic, he possessed one powerful asset: his appearance. His mother would often boast about his good looks, a feature he meticulously maintained. He was always careful with his hair and clothing, and his presence was often announced by a strong cloud of cologne. To his neighbors, he projected a positive image. They saw a polite, well-mannered young man who always spoke softly and respectfully. But according to a former high school classmate, this charismatic persona was a later invention. Back then, weighing roughly 170 pounds, he was socially awkward, with few friends, and would reportedly blush in the presence of girls. After graduation, Zhu resolved to change his image, starting with his weight. He began jogging relentlessly, circling his block again and again. After shedding 50 pounds, he began to garner the praise he seemed to crave. This newfound attention fed his ego, transforming him into someone deeply narcissistic. In 2007, when Zhu had just turned 20, he grew tired of an ordinary existence. He saw a path to something more by entering a singing competition on Shanghai Oriental TV, a program known for launching the careers of several major Chinese pop stars. With his chiseled features and a manufactured brooding intensity, a small fan base dubbed him a prince. The reality, however, was that his talent was purely superficial. His singing and dancing were rudimentary at best, and he was ultimately eliminated from the competition. Still, Zhu appeared to relish the attention. He actively cultivated his online presence, posting selfies, pleading for votes, and engaging with his fans. But after his elimination, the harsh light of reality returned. He went back to working as a salesperson in a department store, falling back into his old pattern of quitting after a few months and moving on. Eventually, he landed a position at a foreign-owned department store, earning a modest 3,000 to 4,000 renminbi per month. But Zhu was fundamentally dissatisfied with a conventional life. His income was low, but his lifestyle was anything but. He insisted on expensive clothes, frequented nightclubs, and spent with a reckless abandon. His polished appearance drew the attention of numerous women, and in this, he saw a potential shortcut to the life he felt he deserved. He began spending even more time in nightclubs, financing his charade by borrowing money and maxing out credit cards to purchase designer clothes and jewelry. It was all part of an elaborate act to appear wealthy. He specifically targeted affluent women, leveraging relationships for financial gain. He juggled multiple girlfriends simultaneously, using declarations of love as a tool. Inevitably, his extravagant habits plunged him into considerable debt. In 2012, at the age of 25, Zhu met a young woman named Yang Liping. They were the same age, their birthdays only a week apart. He was immediately drawn to her, noticing her large, expressive, but he saw something else in her as well. A certain naivete, a nature he perceived as easy to control. Initially, Zhu played his hand carefully, never fully committing to Yang. He maintained a calculated ambiguity in their interactions. At the same time, he was already involved with a wealthy woman and had even commemorated the relationship with a tattoo on his inner arm. It read, Red N.A. Endless Love, January 17, 2012. Red was Zhu Xiaodong's chosen English name, and A was the initial of his other girlfriend. January 17, 2012 marked the day they had met. More than a year later, in October of 2013, Zhu was still seeing girl A, but had now also initiated a formal relationship with Yang. He moved between them seamlessly, sometimes bringing one to social gatherings, and other times bringing the other. For a time, Zhu masterfully deceived both women, keeping them entirely unaware of each other's existence. While dating Yang, Zhu remained buried in debt. He would casually mention his financial troubles, and Yang, completely captivated, offered him her personal savings to help him manage his finances. In her eyes, it was an investment in their future. She was certain he was the man she was meant to marry, even bringing him home to meet her parents that year. But they were not impressed. They sensed a disingenuous charm, a man who couldn't be trusted, and they strongly opposed their daughter's involvement with him. But Yang was completely captivated by Zhu, and she disregarded her parents' counsel. Her sole focus was to be with him, no matter the price. On December 31st, 2015, the last day of the year, the couple officially registered their marriage. Following the union, Yang moved into Zhu's home. In the public eye, among their neighbors and friends, they projected the image of a loving and devoted pair. But what no one could see was the turmoil behind closed doors, where arguments were a regular occurrence. According to Zhu, Yang would frequently initiate conflicts over minor issues, such as her disapproval of the food he cooked or the things he bought. Yang, on the other hand, had confided to her friends that Zhu was excessively frugal and resented her spending time with them. Zhu maintained a tight grip on Yang's life, forbidding her from going out by herself or communicating with other men. This control was a constant source of friction. The situation escalated to the point that Zhu deleted the WeChat app from Yang's phone, a controlling behavior they had grappled with even before the wedding. One of Yang Liping's posts on Weibo provided a chilling window into their private life. He deleted my WeChat a few days ago. If you need me, just text or call. How many people are still alive on Weibo? Women are always okay, but men have the risk of being deleted within 48 hours. Friends on Weibo are going to be deleted as well. Now, this is not a drill. This is a war without gunpowder. Her words painted a stark picture of a relationship where Zhu exerted extreme control over his wife, a discipline he did not apply to himself. Just 6 months after their wedding, Yang discovered Zhu was flirting with other women. He was even arranging secret dates, posing as a single man. When Yang confronted him, a massive argument ensued. Zhu vowed to change his behavior, even getting on his knees to beg for her forgiveness. He documented his remorse on a piece of cardboard, writing a pledge, promising that he would be with her exclusively, would not message or contact anyone else, and would let her inspect his phone daily. He signed it. with his name and then added an ominous line in the bottom left corner that read, "If I cheat again, let's die together by burning charcoal at home." Zhu would later claim he added this line because Yang had threatened to kill herself when she learned of his infidelity. As it turned out, the promise was meaningless, and Zhu Xiaodong continued his affairs. In addition to his cheating, money was a significant source of conflict. They lived in Zhu's old family home, and Yang Liping wanted to renovate it, but Zhu Xiaodong claimed he couldn't afford it and demanded that she pay for it herself. The constant fighting and arguing had left Zhu Xiaodong both mentally and physically depleted. He had harbored little, genuine affection for Yang from the start, admitting he had only married her for her money. Now that she was unwilling to spend money on him, and was, in his view, constantly trying to control him, Zhu Xiaodong started to think about divorce just 2 months after writing his promise. The couple had another explosive argument, after which they mutually decided to divorce. But as they were about to sign the papers, Yang Liping threatened to kill herself if they separated. They left the office without completing the process. Yang did not want the marriage to end. She clung to the belief that Zhu was a fundamentally kind person who made occasional mistakes and was capable of changing. What Yang didn't know was that after their failed divorce attempt, a dark idea had begun to form in Zhu's mind, the idea of killing her. The day after their trip to the divorce office, Zhu Xiaodong purchased 2 books online. The titles, Dissecting Death and Death, contained graphic descriptions of how to choke a person to death and how to conceal a corpse in a freezer. Shortly thereafter, Zhu purchased a 202-liter freezer and installed it on the balcony. To make space for the new appliance, he sold the 2 pet pythons they owned. Zhu also bought a camera and aimed it at the freezer. It was programmed to send a notification to his phone whenever anyone approached. The shopping mall where Zhu worked was losing money and preparing to withdraw from the Chinese market. Instead of waiting to be laid off, he chose to quit. He lied to Yang, telling her he had received a promotion and was being sent to Hong Kong for training, where he would earn 20,000 yuan a month. Zhu insisted that Yang quit her job and move to Hong Kong with him. Although Yang was hesitant at first, Zhu's combination of persuasive talk and deception convinced her, and she eventually agreed that afternoon. Yang went to the principal's office with Zhu to submit her resignation. The sudden decision took the school completely by surprise, as there had been no prior indication of her plans to depart. That very morning, Yang had been teaching her students, with her usual diligence. That afternoon, she walked into the principal's office with Zhu to resign. The abrupt move stunned the school, as there had been absolutely no warning signs beforehand. That same morning, Yang was diligently teaching her students. According to Zhu, his new job in Hong Kong was the reason for their sudden departure. His wife intended to move with him, and despite the principal's earnest efforts to persuade Yang to reconsider, she offered only silence. There was no flicker of reluctance in her expression. The conversation left the school principal with a disquieting and profound impression of the man named Zhu. Later, the principal took Yang aside for a private conversation, strongly urging her to discuss the matter with her parents. The principal offered a safety net, reassuring Yang that she could return at any time if she had a change of heart. But Yang never told her parents about her decision. 5 days later, she announced her resignation in a social media update. She had configured her WeChat moments to block her family from viewing the post, which claimed her husband had been treating her exceptionally well. This treatment, she wrote, made her feel almost nervous. She mentioned a delightful meal, after which her husband had even offered to buy her new clothes. Yang included 5 photographs of food with the post. In the following days, she assured the principal that her parents had approved of her decision to quit. This was a complete fabrication. Her parents remained entirely unaware of the life-altering choice their daughter had made. On October 14th, she finalized all the handover procedures and officially departed from the school. She visited her parents' home that day, but said nothing about leaving her job. The day after Yang's resignation, Zhu took her on a trip to Hangzhou, but the getaway was soured by a dispute. According to Zhu, an argument erupted. He claimed he was unable to find a hotel that met Yang's standards, so they cut the trip short and planned a return to Shanghai the following day. On the journey back, they managed to secure only regular train tickets, not the high-speed rail passes they wanted, which triggered yet another fight. When they arrived home, Zhu's attempts to pacify his wife were futile. It was Monday morning, October 17, 2016. At 10 o'clock, Zhu awoke to what he described as his wife's incessant chattering, which irritated him to an extreme degree. He claimed he could no longer tolerate it. He reached out with his hands and strangled Yang until all signs of life ceased. Zhu then shrouded Yang's body in a bedsheet and concealed it inside a freezer. Afterward, he methodically cleaned the apartment. He transferred all 45,000 yuan from Yang's Alipay account into his own. He then began to spend, accumulating over 100,000 yuan in charges on her credit card. He applied for several small loans in her name, amassing a total of more than 500,000 yuan. He used Yang's identification card to check into hotels on multiple occasions with different women, spending all the money on travel and shopping. To maintain the illusion that his wife was still alive, Zhu used Yang Liping's WeChat account to message her friends. He meticulously kept her social media profile active with new posts. If anyone called or left a voice message, Zhu would reply in text, impersonating Yang. He would claim the phone's microphone was broken and that they could only communicate through text. On the night before he surrendered to the authorities, Zhu spent the entire night playing games on his phone, from 10 p.m. until 4 a.m. the next morning. At one point, he briefly left the house. He walked to a nearby river to dispose of his wife's phone and ID card, then returned home and resumed his game. He later claimed he attempted to hang himself from the balcony using a clothesline, but that it broke under his weight, forcing him to abandon the effort. He decided to wait for morning. It was his father-in-law's 60th birthday, a milestone that made him realize he could no longer conceal the truth. After a long internal struggle, he finally confessed to his parents what he had done. Accompanied by them, he turned himself in at the police station. When Yang's parents received the news that their beloved daughter had been murdered, they were overcome with devastation and a profound rage toward their son-in-law. They rejected any apologies or financial compensation from Zhu's family. Their only demand was that he face the full penalty of the law for his actions. Zhu's mother was also overcome with grief upon learning her son was a murderer, but she insisted it must have been an accident, not a premeditated act. According to Zhu's mother, her son had always been a well-behaved child, quiet and timid. She found it impossible to believe her son was capable of such an act. Zhu told his lawyer that he had strangled Yang by accident. When the lawyer questioned why he didn't try to save her, Zhu claimed he considered calling for help but was paralyzed by fear and didn't know what to do. He said he watched Yang's motionless body for 3 hours until he finally accepted the reality that she was gone. A year later, the Second Intermediate People's Court in Shanghai convened a trial. During the proceedings, Zhu recounted the history of his relationship with the victim. He described the events leading to her death and the concealment of her body, but he would only admit to hiding the body. He refused to acknowledge any intent to kill. He claimed he had purchased the freezer to store frozen mice for his pet snakes and lizards. He also explained that 2 suspicious books found in his possession were chosen by Yang, not by him. Zhu's narrative was that he became so enraged by his wife's nagging that he grabbed her neck, never realizing his actions would be fatal. His lawyer contended that it was a crime of passion arising from domestic conflict and that Zhu posed little threat to the broader society. The defense argued the court should consider his surrender as a mitigating factor and grant him a more lenient sentence. The prosecution, however, did not concur. Their investigation had uncovered a crucial detail. The delivery address for the 2 books Zhu had purchased was not his home. The murder had not occurred in the couple's home in the Hongkou district, but rather at his father's house. Investigators also noted that the method Zhu used to commit the crime was eerily similar to techniques detailed in the crime novels he had purchased. His true motive, however, remained a mystery, constructed solely from his own testimony and impossible to verify as fact. The prosecution argued that if the events had been accidental, as he claimed, his subsequent actions would have been radically different. No one could navigate such a tragedy with the unnerving calmness he displayed. This wasn't shock. This was the composure of a man who had executed a plan. Furthermore, his decision to confess was just as calculated. He chose his father-in-law's birthday, a strategic move made once he knew the truth was no longer sustainable. Had he been able to, he would have carried the secret indefinitely. Based on this cold calculus, the prosecutor argued that the court must show no mercy for his actions. In the end, the court convicted Zhu of the intentional strangulation and murder of his wife. While the crime stemmed from family conflicts and he had offered a confession, his behavior in the aftermath was deemed malicious and utterly unforgivable. For this, the court delivered the sentence of death. Following the trial, Zhu appealed to the Supreme People's Court. In response, Yang's father posted an update online that simply read, "Justice arrived late." The family then journeyed to Yang's grave, where they presented the court's verdict, a final offering to console her spirit. 1 year later, the Shanghai Supreme People's Court denied the appeal, affirming the original. It was a detail that underscored his chilling detachment. On the very day he killed his wife, he had also booked a plane ticket to Seoul, Korea, and spent the night with friends at a nightclub, staying until the following morning. In June of 2020, Zhu was executed, bringing an end to his depraved life 1,300 days after he turned himself in. Yang's fate was a story of unimaginable misfortune, to be bound to such a man. Her parents were left with the profound emptiness of losing their only daughter. In the midst of this darkness, however, there was a measure of compassion. Yang's parents received an outpouring of support and concern from the public online, a community of strangers hoping they could somehow move past their immense pain and find the strength and peace to live on. This story is a haunting reminder that love should be a light that guides you, not a shadow that consumes you. In the tragic fate of Yang Liping, we see the devastating cost of ignoring the red flags that often hide behind a handsome face or a charming smile. True love does not isolate, it liberates. When a partner begins to silence your voice, delete your connections, or monitor your every breath, it isn't passion, it is a prison. Control is never a sign of care, and possessiveness is not a proof of devotion. We often believe our kindness can heal someone's darkness, but you cannot fix a heart that is comfortable in the dark. Listen to your intuition. It is the quiet whisper of your soul trying to keep you safe. Value the wisdom of those who truly love you, for they often see the cracks in the mask that a blinded heart might miss. Your life is a precious masterpiece, not a possession to be owned or a secret to be hidden. Never settle for a love that requires you to vanish. Choose a partner who respects your freedom and honors your light, because once the silence becomes permanent, there is no turning back. Stay aware, stay empowered, and always choose your safety over a dangerous illusion.